When you have the tape ready.
Yeah. I'll give you the master when I get a chance. I didn't bring it. If I remember, I'll try and bring it to you. We're on the Mem Amud Aleph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10 lines down. It's a brackets. Easy to find. Basin. See that? Basin Sharo is a horek. A basin sees the murderer. Actually saw the murderer. Amru. Now, I should point this out early and point this out often. There's a Beit Machlokes in the Bavli Yerushalmi. It's discussed in the Big Deishation Basar as well. About the purpose of Egla Rufa. Very basic. It's going to crop up several times in the course of our discussion. The Bavli holds that Basin atones in making Egla Rufa for the fact that they did not provide the murder victim with proper protection and companionship. Yerushalmi holds that the Egla Rufa atones for the fact that the Basin did not kill this murderer before he went out and murdered other people. Okay, so the Yerushalmi, in essence, is looking at it from the perspective of, we should have kept closer tabs on the murderer. Maybe now, through the Egla Rufa, we can find the murderer. Okay? The Bavli is saying, we should have kept closer tabs on the murder victim. Maybe now, after the murders occurred, we can make sure they won't happen in the future. Okay? That's in a broad sense. Okay? That makes a fundamental difference.
How does Yerushalmi know who the murderer is? I mean, they don't.
No, but now, through the Pirsum, through the publicity granted this Egla Rufa, so it could be the murderer will show up. You'll find Adam, you'll find some way of identifying who the murderer is. So here's a case, which the Bible does not bring down. Basin saw the person who killed. They saw him. They saw the murder take place. Amru, but they said, it's from a distance. They couldn't recognize him up close. In that case, if it was anybody other than a basin, they would do a rifas egla. That we learned last night. Because Lamaisa, they don't know who the murderer is. They can't identify him. So therefore you do a rifas egla. But here, in this case, since it's basin who saw, even though they can't recognize him again, lo yorfin, he wouldn't do a rifa. Why? It says that the only time that basin does a rifas egla is if they can say, our eyes did not see. But if they did see, even if they can't identify, then they already don't do a rifas egla. They saw, despite the fact that they can't identify. What if basin saw the murder victim? They saw the corpse, but now the corpse is no longer there. Somehow they saw it was there, got carted off. So they need to do an Egla Rufa. So how do they do an Egla Rufa? So it says the Gemara, those that said Yamdu Shnayim B'Yidul Lifneim. Two of the Beis get up and testify in front of the rest of the Beis Din. Those that say Yamdu Kulam B'Yidul, all of the Beis Din, all 23 of them. That's the assumption. Yerushalmi assumes, says the Netziv, that we're talking about a Beis Din of 23. The Bavli assumes we're talking about a Beis Din of 3.
Bavli?
Yeah.
How can you have Beis Din 3? Because all they're doing is measuring.
Yes. But the Netziv holds it's a direct parallel, because the Yerushalmi holds we should have killed the murderer.
The murderer.
How many people need to kill murderer? Based on 23. The Bavli holds that it's a basin which is going to make sure that the person is accompanied. How many need to accompany? Any basin of somebody should be responsible for that.
Up to this point, I would have said that could you have said that's Elu Ve'elu? That the Egla Rufa is
both.
Is for both.
You could have. But there are practical ramifications, right? That's one practical ramification of that, which will bar you from saying that. There'll be other ramifications. So it says the Gemara. So what if they saw? So either two of them get up and testify in front of the rest, and you take another two dayanim to replace them, or the entire base gets up, you either kud bronkomacher and testify to another court. Of course, we know that that's true by Edus on Rosh Chodesh. That is brought down the Bavli in Rosh Hashanah as well. That if Basin saw the new moon, there's a machlokas whether they take two of the number and testify in front of themselves, or they go to another Basin and testify as well. Okay? Rabbi Yehuda bar Pazi b'shem Rabbi Zira said, Chalal, they have to find him dead, a casualty, v'lo farches, not that he's gasping his last breaths. Because they find him still gasping his last breaths, that's not enough to seek out the murderer. Now again, the Dvar of Ram here says this is contingent on the difference between the Bavli and Yerushalmi, because according to the Bavli, it shouldn't make any difference. Actually, I should take that back. Let me wait 1 minute, okay? Let's go to the next case, and then I'll say a Rome Mefar Per Khan. What if they saw him dying here? Uval Lachazman, and they came later back, and he wasn't there. V'lo I say Nasa lo nisim v'choya. I say a nes occurred and he survived. Now the Varvam goes crazy on this. He says, and in the Bavli it doesn't say his Bavli, it says the same idea, same halach, but a different reason. Not because maybe he survived, but because of Xeris Akasav Cholo. We just learned the Xeris Akasav Cholo, so applies the Xeris Akasav Cholo to this case as well. He, when based in Soim, he wasn't yet a cholo, right? He was dying, but he wasn't a cholo yet, right? So therefore, Dvar Avram goes crazy, and this is, I said, he said, I don't understand. If he had a wife, and you saw him dying, you can go testify that his wife is allowed to get married. Why is it not enough to make an egla rufa? Why does Yerushalmi say, no, maybe he survived? He's my wife and go get married, right? So the Dvar Avram says this is the pshat. He says that this is based on the Yerushalmi's parameters. Yerushalmi's parameters are we need to find the murderer, right? We're upset we didn't kill the murderer, but he's got to have a shame murderer then. And the halacha is if I murder somebody, but he survives, right? Even if he survives the murder, b'neis, I don't get killed. So therefore, that's what Yerushalmi is saying. Perhaps he survived through a ma'isa nes. You can't kill the murderer on this basis. It's interesting because even though you can actually testify his wife is dead because we don't assume that a nes occurred, but vis-a-vis a murderer, you can't kill the murderer unless you have conclusive evidence they died because maybe a nes occurred. High nes is not enough to prevent his wife from getting remarried. Yes, but a Nathan is enough to prevent a murderer from being put to death. It's a rational distinction, right? Okay, you need definite testimony in order to put somebody to death, and there's later for prevented from doing so. So therefore, it says it's Varbron. That's part of the difference between the Bavli, which holds that Hegla Rufa comes because of we didn't provide proper accompaniment. So therefore, this guy was obviously dying. You didn't accompany him properly. Why should you not do Negla Rufa? If you don't do Negla Rufa, it must because it's the cause of Cholo and not Mefarches. And not Mefarper, not taking his last gasp. But the Yerushalmi doesn't learn that way in this case of Mefarper. Rather, the Yerushalmi says, maybe he walked away. It's difficult, but that would get the murderer off the hook. And therefore, in this case, based on the Yerushalmi's mindset, looking for the murderer wouldn't apply. Okay?
Is that the term habeas corpus that you need? You need the body.
I assume that's what it is.
Well, actually, habeas corpus is used to bring somebody out of jail based upon. It's not habeas corpus.
Habeas corpus. Habeas corpus. Anyway, the other point the Barbara makes, which I mentioned last night, is that he says that's only if he was shachal b'shnaim or rov shnaim. If he was mefarper because he was he had his neck was cut, but not completely, and maybe there's some ways in which he can survive. But what happens if you chopped off his head? Our Rav actually says, what if you chopped off a guy's head and he b'nei survived? Like, let's say nowadays it's actually shot. Our Rav was writing 50 years ago, it wasn't really relevant. Well, a little bit more than that, 70 years ago, it wasn't really relevant. But now, theoretically, let's say they made an operation, by which if they sliced off the guy's head, they can quickly reattach and put him back together again. So the Rav says, the guy who sliced off his head gets killed anyway. Says, because he murdered him. Hi, and Nate's occurred and he came back to life. That doesn't matter. You murdered him. Here, Maisa Nisim is that he never lost his survivability. But if he actually lost his survivability, and you did a Tchias HaMesim on him like Eliyahu Novi did, then no, it doesn't matter, you're killed anyway. Okay? Interesting thing Avram says there. Anyway, Reuven v'Farches Kan. Let's say they saw him dying over here, but now you're dead. And then they came back, they find him actually dead elsewhere. Okay, so where do we measure from? So you measure from the place where he is found. Okay, period. Asher Hashem lokechon nosein l'cha. It's the land which HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you do it in the land which HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you. Prat l'chutzaretz, Elaruf, that's by chutzaretz. The Rishta, to inherit, Prat Yerushalmi. To inherit means to be distributed among the Shvatim in this case. It excludes Yerushalayim, Shilachal Shvatim, because all the Shvatim get Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim was distributed among all the Shvatim. It wasn't distributed, right? It was like the District of Columbia. So therefore, Yerushalayim doesn't bring an Egla Rufa. Okay, and now ask the Gemara Kasha, what about Rabbi Shmuel? So Rabbi Shmuel Amar Kobil Shamru B'Torah, all the things which the Torah says, like Kisavol Oretz, they apply when you come into the land, which are saying in Torah, La'achar Abbas Yishon Nemru. They're after 14 years, right? They're after the 14 years in which they entered Eretz Yisrael. Only kicks in after the 7 years they fought, and the 7 years, 7 years that they fought, and 7 years they distributed. So what happens? Yerushalmi means to ask, a very funny question. I don't understand exactly what bothers Yerushalmi, why they're losing sleep about on this. They said, what should happen during those 14 years if they found a challah? They couldn't yet do Egla Rufa, right? Because all of it was like Yerushalayim. It wasn't yet distributed among the Shvatim. So what are you going to do about the Egla Rufa during those 14 years? So I don't know why we care. But it says the Gemara, nevertheless, the Yerushalmi finds a need to answer this. Let's say all those 14 years, they would mark the spot. And then, 14 years later, they came and they measured after Yerushalayim, after Eretz was divided up. It's really a Brera case, right? Because we don't. It's very strange. Because at the time, once you divide up, how can you come retroactively later on divide it up? And all right, that's what it says. Tani Ketza Yosim. What would they do? Shluchei Beisin Yosim. The emissaries of Beis would go Umlaktim es Simonov and gather the Simonim, and it should be either the Kovin also, according to the Korban Eda, they bury him, or the Meicham Mayim means learns that Umakirin also. Now Makirin also instead of Mochin also makes more sense. It seems that it means, because later on I'm going to say it's a machlokas where you measure from. Do you measure from his nose, from his navel, or from his neck? And therefore they have to actually make a siman in the dirt where they found the nose, where they found the navel, where they found the neck, in order to then measure later on, 14 years later, and find out. The other interpretation here might be that so that simonim would mean it's simonim vis-a-vis the halacha of Egla Rufa, where the placement of the body when they found it. The other understanding of makim simonim would obviously be to take down particulars about who, the description of the individual, in case someday they'd be able to identify who he was. Okay? Anyway, we're talking about Kivro, and we mark on its grave, either because of regular Tumah and Tara issues, or because in order to know where the nose, the navel, or the neck was, Kadesh to basement Lishkas Agazis, so the basement eventually come back in Lishkas Agazis from the chamber of the hewn stone, which is Lav Dafka, because it could be a local base. Oh, that's not true. Sorry. The basin which comes to measure comes out from Yerushalayim. So the basin which comes out to measure comes to Yerushalayim to measure to the nearest city which has the basin. Let's see now. Once you mentioned that you make a marker, we get off topic. Bring down a whole sugi here from. We had it. I don't remember where. Moy Cotton says here on the side, Meiser Shane. But I think we had more recently than that. Anyway, let's see. How do we know that we mark graves? Right, Brecha, Rabbi Yaakov Bar Bas Yaakov B'Shem Rabbi Chuni de Bas Chavra. And Rabbi Yossi Armalai said the same thing in the name of Rabbi Yaakov B'Shem Rabbi Chuni de Bas Chavron. And Rabbi Chizkiah and Rabbi Zio Brady Rabbi Chuni de Bas Chavron. They said B'Shem Rabbi Chuni de Bas Chavron. Anyway, somebody here said, V'tomei tomei yikra. Call out tomei tomei. That's what Mitzvah has to do, to tell people that he's tomei, right? And here too, by a kever, you make a marking on it. Kadesha teye tuma korelcha beficha. The field, so the tumor should go out to you in its mouth. The yomer's approach, and it tells you separate, stay away. Rabbi Nachman said, I have a pasuk to tell me this is one of the Haftarahs for Sukkot. I forget for the. I think it's Sukkot. Maybe it's Haftarah for Pesach. It's one of the Haftarahs in Yom Tov. Vavrovim after the Milchama of Gog and Magog. I think it's. It's either last day Pesach or Sukkot. Vavrovim baretz v'vro etzem. They will pass through the land and they will see bones. From here we see that we mark bones. The next word of the pasuk is Adam. Etzem Adam. It teaches us that we mark where we find not the bone, the shedra, the spine, the gugos, and the skull, which is the majority of the makeup of a human being. Ubana, and you build, means it has to be the gravestone is built into the ground. Because the you said you mark a ground, a stone which is not connected to the ground, it'll roll around and you'll assume the tumor is somewhere else. Etzlo, you build the stone by it. That's also a quote from the pasuk still. But Malkam Tar means that the stone, well, the gravestone, Sukkot?
Shabbos Chomoid.
Okay. The gravestone actually extends a little bit beyond the boundaries of the grave and goes into a place of taros, so somebody doesn't come too close. Whereas it doesn't end mamish where the body ends, but extends a little bit into a place which is Torah to give you like a little bit of a siog, a little bit of a leeway. Okay? Tzion says they build a tzion, mikal a tzion. So says it's a marker. What's even mitzion? What if you find a stone which is not built into the ground, but it clearly was a grave marker? And unfortunately, after they desecrate Jewish cemeteries, you find that very often, right? So Motzem says, even though it's not the way to do it, because it's a loose stone, nevertheless, somebody who stands over it is tamei, and the Omer, and I say, even if it's a fragment of a stone, and it really is not big enough for a whole mace, I say, mace kamtu toyer nasun tachter. I say a chopped up dead body was underneath. In other words, either fragments of the body or body which had been chopped off before it was killed. So therefore, even if the stone is not the normal size of a grave, I assume that underneath it is tamei. I have no choice but to assume that. Okay? So if there are two stones, we say that the stones actually demarcate the boundaries of the grave, and therefore, if somebody steps over the stone, he's tar. So if he steps between the stones, he's tar, because these actually demarcate the grave. And my grandfather's grave in Toronto, they actually have, it's American style, so they have a standing gravestone, but they have a metal perimeter, like a metal, just like a metal poles, which demarcate the perimeter of the grave. It's interesting. I've never seen that in Chutz La'aretz before. So it's like it's the same thing. We accomplish the same thing like the Israeli markers accomplish, which is to cover the entire grave. Right? That's how an Israeli gravestone works. So actually, here it's a similar idea that you have the stones demarcate the outer perimeter of the grave, and the grave is between the stones. But the stones themselves, says Yerushalmi, are not tamei, because they're placed in Mokum Tara, and the tumor is between the stones. Okay? So it says, the Gemara, what, however, if there was somebody had plowed between the two stones? So then, it seems like between the two stones is not exactly the place of tumor. And we say, we say it's two separate stones. And there's either mace kampsus, right, a chopped up mace, or something like that. So, underneath the specific two stones. So there he says, it's harein kichios b'nei Torah between the stars. We will say tamei around the stones themselves, right? Is tamei, meaning that stones themselves are tamei. Says more further. Tani we learned if you have a piece of flesh buried in the ground without bones, you don't put a marker. Right now it's tamei. Yes, but eventually the flesh will rot. and the tumor will go away. So what? What about two rots? Rabbi Yisda ber Shimon Shurim Bo Kum Rabbi Mani ask for Ramana. L'nitza Matami Taros Mafreya. Are you not Matami though all the taros until the flesh rots, which come on top of the grave, and therefore you should have a marker? Amalei said Mutav Shizkakula Bo L'Shah. Better that things will temporarily become tummy. In other words, we're talking that the meat is still not, the flesh is still not rotted. However, not to deprive us of use of that space for all eternity by putting a marker there. So that's how we only mark bones, you don't mark actual flesh, because it'll disintegrate. Time to look over there. Smicha's Kanin, getting back to Garufa. When you give smicha, Farifa Segla, we're not our smicha, real smicha. Farifa Segla, and when you do a Egla Rufa, Bishlosh, you need 3 dayonim. Div Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, B'chamisha, it's got to be 5 dayonim. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean, according to the way the Netziv learns, according to the way the Rambam learns Yerushalmi, you still measure to cities which have 23. But how many dayanim actually have to go and be involved in the measuring? And in the kapara process, not the entire basin, only 3 or 5, but you don't need to have the entire basin present. And in fact, this might even not be talking about the local basin. It's not clear what stage we're talking about, but we know that the measurement is not done by the local basin at all. The measurement is done by those who come out from Yerushalayim to do the measuring, special dayanim. So it's about how many dayanim are. It could be not even about the vidui, but rather about how many dayanim were necessary in order to go out and make the measuring. Okay? So it says, 3 according to Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi says 5. My time, Rabbi Shimon. What's the large Rabbi Shimon by smicha? It says v'samchu. And samchu is plural, shnaim. Ein basin shok, you don't have a balance basin. But similarly, moed you add one more, arek shlosh, that's 3. My time, Rabbi Yehuda, what's the large Rabbi Yehuda? V'samchu is shnaim, that's 2. Ziknei shnaim, that's another 2. Ein basin shok, you don't have a even number of dayanim basin. But similarly, moed you add another one, arek hamish, that makes 5. Ubega rufa, what about be'egla rufa? Rabbi Yehuda says 5. Because it says, time to Rabbi Yehuda, because it says v'yatzu zkenecha. Zekenecha is 9, it's 2. V'shavtecha is 9, it says v'shavtecha, and that's another 2. And based in shog, you don't have a balanced basin. But if you add another one, harek on chamisha, that's 5. Okay? So, Rabbi Shimon holds they're both 3, Rabbi Yehuda holds egla rufa is 5. Amar Rabbi Yehuda said, Nir and Divrei Rabbi Shimon b'smicha. I like what Rabbi Shimon said by smicha, that it's 3. The Nir and Divrei Rabbi Yehuda b'arifa. I like the words Rabbi Yehuda b'arifa, that it's 5. Nir and Divrei Rabbi Shimon b'smicha. I like what Rabbi Shimon says by smicha. The low darsh v'samchu. He doesn't darshan the extra. I guess it says the samchu twice. Does it say the samchu twice?
Maybe it should just be V'samach. Why would it be plural? So just one person is doing smicha, another person.
No, I see. I missed to change the gear so far by the carbon before. In where it says Dvorach Aleph in the margin, my time Shimon. You see that line? It should be, but my time Shimon is samchu ziknei shnayim. It's missing the word ziknei. The word ziknei should be there. So the samchu ziknei shnayim means the only darshan is the word ziknei. He doesn't darshan the word samchu, not like we said before. That's critical. Because now Rabbi says, I like what Rabbi Yehuda says. Because we don't darshan the samchu. Why don't we darshan samchu? That's telling you the act they do. It's not telling you how many people are doing it. Ziknei tells you 2 people are doing it. Samchu is a verb. Right? If it said ziknei v'shofte, those are 2 nouns. Then you can darshan both. It says v'samchu ziknei, that's the verb telling you what they're doing. Okay? So therefore it makes sense to say there are 3. And vice versa, Divrei Rabbi Yehuda b'arifa. Rabbi Yehuda comes out being better by a rifa. He says 5 because it says zikenecha v'shavtecha. It says v'yatzu. Why don't you darshan that as well? Because v'yatzu is taka the verb. And then you don't darshan, you do darshan zikenecha v'shavtecha, right? The rifa lo darsh v'yatzu. Anytime near and Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, if you're going to say that you like Rabbi Yehuda begla rufa, darash v'samchu v'darsh v'yatzu, All right, darshan both. Now, it seems that the Gemara at this point did not fully understand what Rebbe meant to say. Because obviously you're not darshaning v'yotzu. We're darshaning zekinech v'shavtecha. So that's what it goes on to say. Ashkacht at Omar, it comes out that you said v'yotzu is shnayim. I think actually now the Yerushalmi is just giving the background, what he liked.
No, they're coming up at 7 now.
Yeah, but we don't mean that seriously. I'm not sure how to read it now. I thought I knew how to read it, but now I'm not sure. I think ite when you read Rabbi Begla Rufa Darash why should dash v'samchu v'darash v'yatzu, right? Then it says Gemara, no, you don't, because Ashkach at Omer they will come out saying v'yatzu shnaim zekenecha shnaim shavtech v'shnaim, they will come out 6 and Beitzin Shogam Musim Leimorecha Reikan Shiva, and we don't dash in that. There's something choppy here, but obviously the words are missing here.
Spits me out. Maybe it's. Yeah, you really think you're going to have 7?
Yeah, but the conclusion is obviously we don't. The conclusion is missing here. It should say, well, we don't dash in yotz, we don't dash in some, we don't dash in the verbs. But that's because that's what we mean to say. That's something's missing. What's Rabbi Shimon do with the fact that it says kenech v'shovtecha? 2 nouns. You should dash in them. You should come out with 5, just like Rabbi Yehuda. Says, well, no, he says the kenecho shem shovtecha. That's be elders who are your shoftim. It's not 2 synonymous things, which will lead us to the conclusion that it's 4 and add 1 to make it 5. Zekinecha and Shoftecha are defining the same people, that they're both elders and judges. Okay? Tanya Lesben Yaakov says Zekinecha is based in Agodo. He has an altogether different perspective. He says Zekinecha that's based in Agodo. So if they have 2 elders in the base of Agodo, and of course you add another one, because they're based in Joko. And besides that, Shoftecha means they're melted Kohen Gadol. Eglah Ruf is such a big thing, you bring out the king and the Kohen Gadol in order to do it as well. It's an amazing concept. Okay? Halacha base. Well, obviously we don't pass like it, but I guess that was really...
Anytime there's an unclaimed dead body...
Right, now there would be less. They make sure it would be effective. Okay. Halacha base. Nimtza Tom Magat. What if you find him under an avalanche? Or totally bilon, or hanging from a tree. Or floating on the water. Lo yarfi, there would not be an arifa. Shemet says, ba'adama, on the ground. V'lo Tom Magat, not buried in an avalanche. No fell, lying on the ground. V'lo totally bilon, not hanging on a tree. Besotah, in the field. Not floating on the waters. Nimtzat Samach L'Sfarav is found adjacent to a boundary, or Lir Sheyesh Bo Goyim, or a city which has a lot of Goyim, or Lir Sheyesh Bo Basin, or a city which has no basin. Lo Yimodim will not measure. Lo Yimodim El Mir Sheyesh Bo Basin is really the 2 separate things. Obviously, by the boundary and the Goyim, we wouldn't measure at all. It seems to be shot. But when it's found near a city which has no basin, we only measure from a city which has basin nearby, from the nearest cities which have basin. Nimtza b'chum ben shtei ha'aretz are found precisely between 2 cities. Shtei mevi'il shtei ha'golos, they both bring, each one brings its own calf. Divrei Rabbi Elazar. Chomrei Echad says, Yachas mevi'il eglah rufa, only one city brings eglah rufa. Vein shtei ha'yoros, vein shtei ha'golos, you don't have 2 eglah rufas. Vein Yerushalmi mevi'il eglah rufa, and Yerushalmi is not bringing eglah rufa. We already saw the reason for that is because Yerushalmi is not divided up among the Shvatim.
So which city brings it?
So if it's near, so that's a shol shaila. If it's near Yerushalayim, the Pashtus is that nobody brings it.
No, but if it's not near Yerushalayim, it's equidistant to 2 different cities.
Right, we don't know. We'll have to see. We'll discuss it. Could be they're bringing this partnership, or it's all tonight. Okay. Tani, what if he's found suffocated to death, not run through with the sword, the totally be on the way hanging from a tree, lo you orphan, they would not do a rifa sedla. Rabbi Yosef said that's too big a chiddush. I mean, you didn't have to go that far to make a chiddush. That's rather, it's too small a chiddush. Ain't talking about chonik for totally be on. Because that's saying that if he's suffocated and hanging from a tree, he's hanged, you don't bring an egel rufa. I mean, I don't know that if he's lying on the ground and it's suffocated, that you don't bring an egel rufa. Tamlo chalol, because the pasuk says chalol, that he's a casualty, and a casualty means through a sharp implement. Ma tamlo nofel, and vice versa. Why is it saying the pasuk nofel, that he's falling? Now, even if he was clearly run through the sword, but he was hanging on a tree, loyal orphan, they would not do a rifa. Very interesting concept here. Said, named Rabbi Yochanan, if he's standing on his bed, this sounds like a Sherlock Holmes mystery. The guy is standing on his bed, and the heart is in his heart. The knife is sticking out of his heart. Ain't orphi, don't do a rifa. Now, why not?
Because he's standing up, he's not lying down.
So the three possible reasons: either because he's standing up and not lying down, or because two possible reasons. No, three possible reasons. He's standing up. He's not nofel. It's not badoma. It's in bed. It says badoma, right? And the Dvar brings up from the Achronim that it's in the city. And there's many Achronim hold they don't bring an egla rufa when it's in the city. It's only v'yotzim michutz lawyer. And here is in bed. It seems like it's
camping out.
Okay. Well, it's lav dafka, right? But Emet Dvar Avram has several rayas that Lemaisa, this is the historian here, which actually is in play, is the fact that he's standing up. And even if his standing up and his feet are actually touching the ground, not touching his bed, he's still not being an egla rufa. Because it's got to be noifel. So there's got to be something who falls down to the ground. Okay? Says Mole, Tarishim Meichai says, Hoy orphan. In such a case, you found him standing in bed with a knife run through his heart. You do Arifa Segla. Says Mara, no. Tarishim Meichai. That which Rabbi Shimon Yochai said, that which is attributed to Rabbi Yochai, min elain da hachen. Now, I'm sure Lieberman is somebody like this speaks about the derivation of the term hachen. And I couldn't find anybody offhand today who speaks about it. And with as far as I have right now, the base medrash with me. So, but to me, the way the Bnei Moshe says it is, Rabbi Yochanan is making fun of the Babylonians again. He said this was an erroneous statement by the Babylonians. That Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai had said, allegedly, that in a case where he's standing in bed, you do bring an egla rufa. It's not true. It's from those guys who say blah blah. Okay, it's like blah blah. Dam Rabbi Yochanan said, calling Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, all these statements from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, min ilay da achen. It's for those who say blah blah. And Yechidininu, these are only individual transmissions or allegations. We do not rely on them to be true. Okay, Nimtza Bar Liliyah, what if it was found obviously close to one city? Nevertheless, Hoyu, it's a type which should be moedim. Nevertheless, they would measure. Okay, the kaibo mitzvahs isuk mediyah. It's a mitzvah to do the measuring. So you do it even though it was obvious. Rav Nachas Kaman. Rav came to Chutz Loretz. Omar, he said, Anahu ben Azai dacha. I'm the ben Azai here. Ben Azai was a tremendous Talmid Chacham, and he was to go around answering everybody's question. He said, I'm now here the ben Azai. I'm going to answer the question, which needless to say gets a person in trouble. Actually, Bavli, this mice is brought down also, but it's a Baye instead of Rav. So it's a couple of generations later. And yes, so anyway, Asa Chatzab, an old guy comes shortly, he says, you're so smart. What about Nimtzu Shnei Harugim Zel Gavzeh? What if you have two bodies, one on top of the other? Savar Rav Shei Morfim. Rav said, well, Pashas you do Egla Rufa. Am relates to the old guy said, Ein Orfim, you don't do Egla Rufa. Am Lei Lama, so Rav said, why not? So he said, Am Lei Atachta Mishum Talmud, because the bottom one is buried, it's under an avalanche. But Tava Elyon Mishum Tzaf. And the upper one is floating. Right, it's not Aladoma. It's not Aladoma. So Katzak Lacha, when Rav came back to Eretz Yisrael, Asa Kamadi Rebbe came in front of Rebbe. And Amarle, Rebbe said to him, Yosamachla. He said, good to you, but not for the same reason. Kimotze, lo kimotzu. It says kimotze singular and not kimotzu plural. Now the Rambam, in fact, paskins, however, that you measure from the top guy. From the top dead body. And everybody goes crazy on that because it sounds here that you don't measure from either one of them, right? And the Bavli has a whole different tack on this. The Bavli does not learn out from Sukkim. The Bavli learns it out from Min B'mino Chotzitz or Min B'mino Eno Chotzitz, right? If Min B'mino is Chotzitz, then it's the upper one is Tzaf and the bottom one is under an avalanche. But if min b'mino ain't a chotzetz, so it's as if they're both on the ground. Right, so then that's how the Bavli learns. The Bavli brings proofs from shikha. If you forgot one omer on top of another omer in your field, whether that shikha, not a shikha, or the min b'mino chotzetz or not. But it's obvious that the Rambam learned that the Bavli argues Yerushalmi, Paskin like Yerushalmi. According to his understanding, Yerushalmi, because lo yimatzu means you don't bring two. The Bavli was learning, but one you can bring. So he was obviously learning that even though the way the Zakin, the old man, told him, they're both exempt. But nonetheless, we don't paskin that way. We paskin that the top one is the one from which you measure. I was thinking, by the way, although there's really more discussion of the Bavli, not the Yerushalmi, that this min b'mino chotzitz or eina chotzitz is very similar to the machlokas we have by bittul barov, where the min b'mino, when you have two things the same, are they batul barov or not batul barov? But that's all in the Bavli. Yerushalmi doesn't mean that in over here.
I can understand why you mentioned the top one, because he was the last one murdered.
So what?
So maybe that's the one.
Measure twice. Why should you measure twice? There's a cost. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's immediately logical to us. Could be. So anyway, so it says more about Doma. I'm sorry. Lo mistabra da ella ba'doma v'lo tzafal pneimai. The has to be. One second. This is a new thing. I'm sorry. I see the lo mistabra da ella ba'doma v'lo tzafal pneimai is actually fixing up our Mishnah. The Mishnah said that Adama means lo tomun bagal, right? Adama means on the ground and not under the avalanche. So the Gemara corrects it. It says no. Badama means that he's not floating on water. It's on the ground. And Basadeh, the Mishnah used to preclude v'lo tzafal pnei hamayim, not floating on the water. So the Yerushalmi itself corrects it and says Basadeh is teaching us lo tomun bagal, not when it's buried under an avalanche. Because Adama can also be in an avalanche. It's still Ba'adama. So Ba'adama would preclude water. And vice versa, Basadeh, that wouldn't preclude water necessarily. Maybe that you have water in your Sadeh, right? You have like an irrigation canal. But if you say, but if Basadeh does impede you from learning that if there's an avalanche on top, because Basadeh means it's open out in your field. So therefore, the Yerushalmi actually amends the Mishnah and turns around the drushes in the Mishnah. I think the Bavli does that as well. Mechavishi does it the Rabbanim. I'm sorry, and there was a Bryce now. So Rebbe, which in fact had this opposite perspective, that Adama precluded floating and Basada precluded covered. Mechavishi does the Rabbanon, it's a kind of contradiction Rabbanon, and here we bring this in, although in a different context, that than the Bavli does. We have a contradiction between here and Shikha. It says, Talmud Ina Amrin, therefore there they say, Basada is Pratlatum, right? The opposite. Talmud here, Tamon here means here, like the Yerushalmi talk. Here, they say Pratlatum that if the mace is buried or underneath something, you don't bring an egg rufa. But there by Shikha, if you forgot a omer in your field, they say the rabbis are talking. Even if the omer is underneath something, the sheave is underneath something, it's still considered to be forgotten vis-a-vis the halachos of Shikha. So how do you reconcile the two? So it says Martama, there it says Sadcha, which would mean begoli, revealed. Pratlatum is supposed to be concealed. And it also says Uktzircha, your harvest, which is also begoli, something which is revealed. Pratlatum is supposed to be which is concealed. Mute achar mute. It's two exclusions. Two exclusions makes an inclusion. So therefore, l'rabbos is not Talmud. Therefore, it comes to include Talmud. But here it says here about Dom lo tzafal pnei hamayim, but obviously it should be the Basada, the low Talmud, right? It says only one time. It's not a double mute. Or maybe Yerushalmi means to say the second mute is written about something else. It's not a mute achar mute l'rabbos. One mute is about Talmud, and the other is about tzafal pnei hamayim. So therefore, here we preclude both. Period. New issue. Nimtza samachos far. What do you find it near a boundary? Anil mer srakim ergo. I say bandits killed the guy. Lier shesh b'goyim. If I find it adjacent to the sea which has goyim, anil mer goyim ergo. I say see that the goyim killed him. Only ir she'em bo beistin. Now, if it's found near a city which has no basin, lo yimodim elam bir sheish bais, only measured from a city which has a basin. The Chesiv says Yodein lo shavchos hatam hazeh. Our hands did not spill his blood, and again, we, as I said before, means that we tried to find the murderer, or we attempted to find the murderers and eradicate them. My time of the Rabbanan, what's the Rabbanan? That say that that only one city brings, not two cities. This is going to the next part of the Mishnah, that you have two cities near the Cholo. So Rabbanan say only one. See, Vayoyer Kavol Cholo. It says a city which is closer to the Cholo, right? My time of the Rabbanan, you measure to various different cities. So actually, I thought the Yerushalmi was going to reconcile this, but it doesn't actually tell us what happens according to Rabbanan. I think according to Rabbanan, both cities bring together. I might be wrong about that. It's either both cities bring together or neither city brings. But in any event, they argue about Psham Psukim. Because Rabbanan says, since you can measure to multiple cities could bring the Egla Rufa. Rabbanan said, no, it says, V'oya Ir, only one city brings the Egla Rufa. Ir Miklat Mal. Mike, can you measure to the Ir Miklat? So, in Temen Lachlokas, if you're going to say they're distributed to the Leviim who live there, Mevios Egla Rufa, then they bring Egla Rufa. In Temen Lebeis Dirnin, if you're going to say the Leviim were allowed to live there, but they're really super territorial, and it would be an Egla Rufa, they can't bring Egla Rufa because they're just like Yerushalayim, that they're not divided up according to the Shvatim. And this is obviously an issue elsewhere in Shas, not by us, but have ramifications for our issue as well, where to bring Egla Rufa from that city. Okay? From where would they measure? Rabbi Elazar says from his navel. Rabbi Akiva Chotam from his nose. And the place where he becomes a casualty meets Savor from his neck. Okay, we have a brisa on this. I know you molded him. From where they measure? Rabbi Elazar says from his navel. From the place where the child is conceived, right? The umbilical cord is there. From his nose, corresponding to the place where you can tell what he looks like. Now we're going to cite a parallel Yerushalmi and Yavamas, but before you go on, the Or Yosha goes crazy on this. He says, the Bible says that you measure from the nose because the nose is Ikar Makom Chiyus, Vayipach Papav Nishmas Chaim. Which makes sense because you're trying to atone for his death, right? But what does that have to do with whether you can recognize him from there? The Yerushalmi's reason seems to make no sense. Who cares if a person is recognized by his nose? What does that have to do with Egla Rufa? You understand this question?
Well, if it's in the way you said earlier,
though. Oh, so it's a clear to me because the Ariel himself brings down this Machlokas Bavli Yerushalmi, the Netziv, which speaks about it by the concept of the basin of 23, and then he just blithely ignores what he himself said a couple lines later when he asked the question. If you hold that it's an atoning process, so then it makes sense to atone for the loss of life, which has to do with the nose, as Vayipach Bap of Nishmas Chaim, like the Bavli. But if you hold it's an investigative process to, find the killer, so you want to pay more attention to the victim to see how you can
knowing who the victim is.
Exactly, find out, which means that's why you would be measuring from the nose. It's clear to me that the Or Yosha doesn't just give that answer based on the Bavli Yerushalmi. Anyway, Vasya Kaida Mar Rabbi Yehuda B'Shem Rab, it goes like it is the name of Rab. Hakalas B'neim Otzabab, the countenance of the face responded against him, Zachoitim, it's the nose. Amar B'chir Bar said, Man the boy lo mischak, when somebody doesn't want anybody to recognize him, Mamish Tzuge Pas for Adar, you have Siflani on the Chire, you should put a false nose on. The Siflani means literally a bandage. Alright, he puts a bandage on his nostrils. Lo mischak, people will not recognize him. Right, it's constant. So the Yerushalmi. That's right. Kiada. There's a certain case, but our sickness malka. And sickness is obviously a bad king, used to tax the Jews very much. Haven't Tziporim is buying the Tzipor, they were demanding tax from the Tziporites. So they put bandages on their nostrils, but lo mischakmi, the tax collectors couldn't recognize them. The Seifa, in the end, Itmar Alein Lishon Bish, the thief they were snitched on by Lashon Hora. V'itzdanu Kulon mean, I think it should be Mindibo. I think we correct that when it was in Miavamas too, that everybody was caught because of that Lashon Hora. Okay, getting back to the final sheet in our Mishnah, Lozman Yaakov. Lozman Yaakov says you measure from the neck, or Lozman Yaakov says a moment, Mimalkum Shanasa Cholo, from the place where he was made a Cholo, which is, of course, the neck, because normally you kill a person by slicing his neck. My time, Pasuk teaches us, Rabbi Shimon Rishua, Lasi Sosal Tzavarecha Le Rishoim, to place it on the necks of the casualties of the Rishoim. Okay, Pasuk also probably brings that. Nimtzo Rosh Mokamach. Why did you find the head in one place? Gufa Mokamach, and the body in another place. Molichan Rosh Yitzaguf, you bring the body to the head. Divi Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Akiva says the Gufa Yitzaguf you bring. You bring the head to the body. Divi Rabbi Lezer. Akiva Omer, Gufa Yitzaguf you bring the body to the head. Now Rabbi Lezer says, and the Bible says as well, Likfur Nechlu is nothing to do with Ekla Rufa. Has to do with where you bury a Meis Mitzvah. Meis Mitzvah is buried where he falls casualty. Right? That he's kind of that mokum for a kever. So here it's talking about, do you bury, if his head is severed from his body, torso, do you bury him where his head is, where his torso is? But from Ekla Rufa, you freeze it. Well, I mean, you don't freeze it literally, but wherever it was, you measure either from the head or from the navel, or depending on the different shitas. So you wouldn't bring the head to the body in order to measure. It's only in terms of kfura. Okay? Rishonim Rabbi Innocent said, "Mapli, what's the machlokes? When the head was, they had a hill going down, and the head was up here, right on top of the hill. Ba'guf milmat, and the body to fall further down. So Rabbi Lezer holds that the head rolled away from the body. It rolled uphill. But since it's light, sometimes, it hits the ground with an impact, it jumps uphill, the head. So you bring the head down to the body. You bring the head down to the body. Whereas Rabbi Akiva holds, no, wherever the head fell, that's where it fell originally, and the body rolled down from there. So you bring you don't bring the body up to the head, you don't bring the head to the body, you bring the body to the head. Okay? But what if the head was lower down, and the body was further up the hill? There we definitely bring the head to the body, because we assume that the head rolled away from the body. Where, let's say you had an incline which went like this, and you found the head on one side and the body on the other side. So do you assume it's the same corpse or not? Right? Do I say so the head rolled one way and the body rolled the other way, and you bring them together? Or I say I say that this head has no body, and this body has no head. And the Gemara doesn't give an answer. But if it was, the Gemara does give an answer to this, if it was a flat surface, not inclined. So any place where it could theoretically have jumped away from the body when it was chopped off, we assume it's one body. If it's too far away, we say the body has no head, and there's no body, and they're for two separate mason. Okay, and they're not necessarily buried together. Okay, a couple more minutes. Niftu Ziknei Yerushalayim. The elders of Yerushalayim, which came to measure, would go. So obviously, previous mission was talking about the elders of Yerushalayim coming only for the measurement. And they would leave. The Ziknei and the elders of that city, according to the Bavli, even the city of 3, according to Yerushalmi, the city of 23, Mavin Eglos Baka, they would bring a calf, which was not worked, which did not pull a yoke. Venamum Pasabo, it has a mumtzad pankas, it's not a real carpet. Miyaso Nachal Eis, and they take it down to a virgin, in other words, unworked Nachal. Eisan Kimashmo, Eisan is like the word, sounds kosher, tough, but it has been used. Nevertheless, I'll be saying Eisan, even though it's not Eisan, still kosher. Right. What, crook, you see the lab crook?
No. Yeah, what is Nahal Eitan mean?
It is Nahal Eitan?
Yeah, Rashi says, like this Mishnah. There's somebody else who says that it's flowing water, it's not hard ground.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't sound like that way from the Mishnah.
Not at all.
Yeah. Maybe that was when you learned Pshat Psukim independent of Chazal. Anyway, you bring its neck from behind. Umakoma, wherever its neck is wrong, awesome in Israel, you're now allowed to plant there, lie there, and to hold there. You're allowed to comb flax, to To clean rocks, you're just not allowed to do groundwork. Now, the Gemara is going to discuss at some length the parameters of what work passes by an egla rufa. Maybe we should leave for tomorrow because it's going to just goes on and on. Okay, so we'll stop here for tonight.
One discussion with Yerushalmi totally avoided.
Yeah.
The Bali had was Rov and Karov.
Yeah, Bobby doesn't have that in Sotah.
I know it doesn't have.
It's in Bava Basra.
It's in Bava Basra.
That's why there's a big deshesh on the topic.
Or is that right?
Yeah. So I don't know, Bava Basra and Yerushalmi, maybe it's there too. I don't know.